Fast forward, you know, our channel is social, so I'm saying, I'll say, FunnTV GH. Podcast always a training because you make headlines. And a Jimmy need to be somewhere. Or need to be on Roxy, and a daily can. But sure, say, waiting to subscribe to the channel. But when you're waiting, I hit on notification bell. Share now for friends or answer into me and can I'm sure on your Kesi say, what me aboa now or pitting and 7 a good abonting at the amami. For comment, share under the comment section. Now, you didn't come this year. K.Pratt Jr. Menokasi Supreme Court ruling who sent some by and ordinary atumbi. Na answer what should I say? Judges never hon. A on no total population of Ghana and Nemu in a munina mujina. And nam say Ghana for yina intimi and what Supreme Court ho. Say your court interpretation of Kesi sir. Ye de babe down Supreme Court no. Inti any yemu say montrase. Na munyina Ghana for yina name. Nemo no so on mine well no. E ko bakse. Mankasa mo demo pe. Mankasa demo pe. Ye no me bi. E mani ko fever. Nipa ba ko bi dia. Ne kamia kwese omai ne nyina na modi ehwamo K.Pratt akasa be pray at this point in time you mon run simu na yenwe ne ko ani dia ba shino so am say FunnTV GH.
The Supreme Court ought to understand clearly that the 5 or 7 of them who sit there in the court, sit on that superior bench in the name of 32 million people of Ghana. Sana, if all the 32 million people of Ghana could be empaneled to hear cases of the interpretation of the Constitution, to try criminal cases and so on, we would not have a Supreme Court. The reason why we have a Supreme Court is that it is impossible for all the 32 million of us to be empaneled. So through some arrangement that we have agreed, we have selected a certain group of people based on a certain criteria to advocate in these matters, so they do so in our name, on our behalf. The Supreme Court exercises the sovereign will of the people of Ghana. You understand? It is not about the sovereign will of the people of Ghana. We need to understand that clearly as a matter of principle. So that imposes a duty on the judiciary, the Supreme Court, the courts of appeal, and so on, that at all times when they are taking decisions, they ought to have at the back of their mind that that decision is being taken in the name of Kesi Adakwa, who is a security guard in cantonments, who perhaps did not have the privilege of going to secondary school. That decision is being taken in his name and on his behalf. That decision is being taken in the name and on behalf of Abna Mansa from Drama, from Gomoa Drama, who didn't go to school at all. You understand? They have to understand that clearly. Because sometimes the impression is created that these are special people with special people coming from some strange place and so on, who are not one of us or some of us, who are above us in everything, and they act on their own. They don't. The very principles of the Constitution, the very principles of law and so on, is clear. They act on our behalf and not above us. Well, it's important to recognize that some of the most eminent lawyers and jurists in our country are speaking about the state of our judiciary. And their comments are not exciting. Their comments are not pleasing. For example, a former Chief Justice has publicly declared that our judiciary, especially the Supreme Court, is becoming too predictable. What does that mean? How do you predict the outcome of cases before the judiciary, before the court? And what makes them so predictable? Orientation of judges, known commitments of judges, record, their records and so on, is what makes it predictable. Now, if this is what judgments are based on and so on, then this country is in very deep trouble. Then I heard this eminent lawyer, Mr. Ťr0ǔblě. And Mr. Ťr0Úblě says very clearly that the crisis in our judiciary is far worse than the crisis in our economy. What? That's a huge statement. As if you are talking about the crisis in our economy, you are talking about bankruptcy. You are talking about a country which needs more than 128% of its total national revenue to service debt, pay debts, and pay public sector emoluments. Now, if this crisis is less weightier than the crisis in the judiciary, then we have a monumental crisis in the judiciary. And these are not my words. These are the words of somebody who has been a law lecturer for many years, and who probably was a teacher of some of the people who are sitting on the Supreme Court today. And his verdict is that the crisis in our judiciary is far worse than the crisis in our economy. Now, I watched the proceedings yesterday. You understand? I watched the proceedings yesterday. And I've also read the report of which you read from one of the newspapers, which says that the Chief Justice was angry. You know, I mean, where does anger arise in the work of the Chief Justice? The Chief Justice's role is to impartially, with other judges of the Supreme Court, interpret the Constitution. Where is anger in that? How does anger arise? How does anger become an issue? So I'm just sitting back and wondering, I mean, where is this anger coming from? Okay. Now, I want today just to dwell on principles. Okay? Just to dwell on principles. Ghana has a Supreme Court only because 32 million Ghanaians cannot sit in judgment over cases. Ghana has a Supreme Court because 32 million Ghanaians cannot sit together to interpret the Constitution. So that power of the people, the power, the sovereignty of the people, has through legal arrangements, including constitutional provisions, been transferred to some category of citizens. So when the Supreme Court actually sits, it sits in the name of the people of Ghana. The Supreme Court itself doesn't have any powers beyond the powers that the people of Ghana have vested in the Supreme Court. So at every time when the Supreme Court is making decisions, it should be asking the important question whether it is truly, genuinely, legitimately acting on behalf of the 32 million people of Ghana.
Mamena was what you're tinting our FunnTV GH podcast story setting in the Kesi make headlines. And a Jimrena EDB Exumo. Nidium Niam Brasimus and AD Kanya Mistress will be my subscribe to the channel. But when you also be my hit notification bell, share now for friends or answer into me and can be an idiom Niam Brasium. Yamon Ryan Semobium. Supreme Court issue Ebeda Ghana for Com enya aksem koto kra bra verdict ne ba bondi abontin so no kana for do na bo na anyere anyu so do na we ena K.Pratt junior enso adina ho atumbi a okemi bi se a judges for a mo the bench of a Supreme Court no muti the superior bench of Supreme Court no ayo maine nyina na yi mu se mo konam kosi anamu enam se yi nyina yi ntimi enso aye ho kogu Supreme Court ho se yekoye interpretation of cases inti and you select mo se mo de mu yene mu de fo mu si nyina ye namu nimum se ekoba se asembi ba ne se boda on national issues na se yentimi atoto asem no se ni asem no esibi fata na ekomia se tenchie bi ebowura mu dia na enye nipa ba ko no a wodi ya wono wasem no ho na wo ha no nimum oye oman ni nyina verite baye K.Pratt junior nebo anyu so a watinte skoko de go ajejes for iso emu mana so ye hwene ye ko ene de ba ha ay FunnTV GH
parliament no be independent candidates. That's what they are trying to say.
If you originally get to the NPP meeting.
Yes,
that's what NPP
because yes.
This is
that's what the decision is saying.
It's even say new NPP candidates now Agona Western.
Yes.
Say ye meeting and discuss strategy on the baby winner.
Morris
also contested as
this
strategies are not their body.
Yes. You see the absurdity in the decision. That's where we are coming from. And that's where we have got it to. So Nana, maybe Sinona Mecha will say, in as much as I respect the Supreme Court, in as much as I have so much respect for them, I disagree with the decision that they came up with. And I support Justice Amadou Tanko and Lovelace Johnson. So Mokache, in the first place, the Supreme Court do not even have what jurisdiction to look at the matter, and this matter is not a matter of interpretation. And I'm conclude by saying this: Nana, in law no, there will be a strict liability offences. Nana ofaka, now we need license. Yet we need defense. What is the Americano? In law no, there will be a strict liability offense. Say wo kaka, it's Nana. Yabua wahi no akofaka oni license so otia
I friend kojo ebua
nana kojo ebua
na why na ba kojo ebua na mo
oskepe or driving here chini se ya o tumi nkokoto nkoka so defense bia a strict liability offense. So for us, you've driven a car of which you don't have a license, you don't have any excuse, yenti wa no, the law take effect, you will be fined or imprisoned. And now say when who read say aso with him strict liability standard provision article 97
GNH
1 GNH no immediately you do anything in the form of that act then the thing will be what activated.
Thank you.
And that's what I see. So the Supreme Court cannot clothe themselves with interpretation and come and give us this as a verdict. Nana, I am disappointed.
Say yakase bibia yenyama Supreme Court. Oh yeah, this anti-homosexuality bill. Now the last time we had the court said the president ain't mean sign because I walk court in the say Supreme Court court no say free necro. In fact, there's no straight provision, and I hear the Criminal Offences Act and I can say about unnatural carnal knowledge. Now the Supreme Court misinterpreting in quotes. Say free necro on natural carnal knowledge, you need me natural any idea. And ne bill no my president in Mungu ni idea. Now be decided finally cry say a man named Mabetima worry. A man named Mabetima worry. I'm interpret here until it becomes a law. Do we sit down and fold our arms as citizens because Supreme Court in the say what we know say it is at the heart of the values of our country?
Nana me ase. If I can use uncheti for nyashofo. Must brand the Lord you know a lawyer to check him out, check the drama tea for tea. Yes, so street one, yes, street law. Yes, the neighbor. What you say? Nana yentiment now. Emma Maya is a population here saying.
I'm saying 32 million. Yeah, we are him.
Yeah, 32 million, get it to 35. Yet the beer near to one. Near ma nipa 16. I can't go boom. This is nine. You want my Diana a penny on the aba. In see a penny on the aba. Yeah, you said you're not the branding it. In see a penny yet, no more the aba. Yes, I'm renting the dim run so. Now, yet, tell Mamma constitution in a actual constitution at one. Who knows a signy padun say? One what's a sana, almost a sako. One more training for fro. I break crowd or more training your papa. Any or my team lawyer for no so dear. Woman in a so or more leaders, you know. It told me at the end of your crumble say a respected decision, but the way there be more respect or more by way they
disagree.
You disagree or and charge there be a son of your money. Nana yet crow way in a best set. Ya yin se best set to go by BNI the main thing. And the sunny padun say, or more best set at 12. But Ghana card the best set Cocogeno, said no papa.
Passport,
and no papa. Meanwhile, Sanya Mammy, who Cocogia just our best set. Babel said to us, who Yanton Crane. I'm a sandy padun say, Etima transit at Wakne. Omani Agatum, Yafanisa, and you, Yafanisa, and
says a decision in Supreme Court making Nanyan
Nyansa Baku cramponim. Nyansa Baku cranim. Ya wo de amfa mranto nchei bia nyina ba se hu ba bia ye wo ye ne ba bia freni ade ade se ba ye be hu na na otu da ko ye wo no because anguna se na otu da ko beta ko nyina ba bia se wo no ba bia keke ba be set na ka kire ba bia wo ni be hu hospital kro ye de wo ni ade na hu nipa no na nse kokko ball no se the age na e niam o man se age be de na yetimi pa check ba ye age wo ho ba mo be de na yetimi with difference e hin ye wo no no ofi hin ade sa be set na ye de ye de check those things Ghana follow ye nipa dun 16 omotima trans omobato agu ya jedi nana yet one man no mako famra ade bi beba anya bia omso mba be cheche no be cheche nana wa na no de mba be cheche mu me ne umie no wonim se san cheche mu tokonu decision we wonim se kofo na di card buy kofo ayi obi koko interview no kofo na static council no de wonim se sa ayi MPC decision o take no as take effect on the next parliament not this one na me de abafon de nipa to be Ghana o me mato abafon pa
they are inconsistent too.
Me say me mato abafon man we but mato aba from 1992 up to ne me to ma dubu ahina ma beto ma kofo me to bi ma kofo ado but the kofo de win na me kan me to do 2012 ene me gya na chidi utima say 2016 me to ma jomama 2020 me to ma jomama we me say mato ama no utima say the emperor me chance mato abafon o man pani kofo me to ye call second round the first round na nyina me to ma no na me nim say sa adwene na netim na me mo so obi a statement dey dey qualify obi so a statement hunto timi koka oda bia me na be konto kwado do na
he has opinion
anyo we ya mra na yeka we ya lawyer one way lawyer nke sa be enko mampani da da mama na eka dia kan so do wanye law
ba say no mpo no assemble ako lawyers me timi gina different stance enti no so mampani nkofo share no opinion na eno no nya in curtains to but ono so na dwene no
anya na dwene no Ajumboni ne woni team.
Oh no, you can't say that.
No,
I'm sorry.
No,
you can't say that.
Because someone no interview no kan nyina bibi o kan bia na o ka chia no. Say bibia be favor NPP. Papa ne yes onye ne niam so o kan sama say statement ma Ghana for say papa we di akokotena fie no o kan sama de abotoye mbaba. Wo say no blame we abamba bin. Yeah, speaker on no blame no boy panimu eso de nancy from no ototo niema ye na eso mampani timi ba no asem ba betu dwa before ansa na mamu be kwa wieye enti bibia waka over the nancy from the emra na ye parliament o enye wa decision we take decision ye de what man say o mampani kasa ye mampani mesema mato aba to agu papa the same beto aba magire ho pa ansa na mato aba ya to aba ma mo be lead your man ye nim so wadwen papa de be lead your the decision some o kan ye pepe the chief justice here and o ko chegu paper so de buy the same thing we tell interview na take chief justice and no difference and pepe no so ko send we tie no so copy no de buy simple we wie
doko no copy
kufo we take kufo interview no tie to ko no we pepe no difference
that is say to ko no confuse it will who say kufo kasa
and one or
two pen no say akora ya boa me it will track okra no copy and paste
on the buy what you say pepe difference ni mo wuti o mampani kufo interview no tell ebe effect
to no your learned colleague
I'm telling
me mean to me learned colleague or learned Leonard lordship, Leonard justice.
Sa no mo kano.
Leonard justice.
Ya be fa ne sa. But o man pani ku fon sem no kan wanyi ba kokura fi no fa ba kokura.
E bi ani ni share.
As akufa do yeso ni en crofon sem of find the same thing ma me fa ya o chere by. What ma say? No man ya tim na se da bi e betena se. Na sem ba na se di asem obi. Me se first utwa mu even Supreme Court ani mu a. Me electrical technician.
O yam kra be show.
First ni fa inside. And o mo broke some mo me fa inside. There is a cover bank of Ghana chi wo.
Sunsun bi kra be show.
Ni mu pa na usuro.
Sunsun bi ani ho.
Say susu ma what is that ayi commercial court mpo o susu mche no
okay atuguba Supreme Court atuguba Supreme Court
me say I remember when Mugabe mu ya chedi Mugabe mu ko mu tie 3 chese me ra Supreme Court na enframa foforo na wo Supreme Court
atuguba mu Supreme Court
eno no what aho na ria ba bedu say na me de na ya na me ya ne say Supreme Court judges na mo pension omo fie chief justice omo ko fie ni ade no sa decision full say kaza mutimi trans mo small press conference da bi maame ade no wotu agu wo semra no etimra no muntutu ni ye wotima na anu a sikasamba ya de nyina ye wu no former chief justice ni de ko di mu no maame no so ko picket
so fa akufu
okọ bi anamboa eti na oda so ahodi o
me do correct
China me count man say me can so o correct e do ska sama na ni sika ya kwayira no na ni bere wotima say and then no hwe sika asamo ba and conference to go from 4 or 5 no munya press conference no muka say no emran ba bia mo de ko no mo yes say emran no mo tutu niam ye na decision we nya papa mo mongu na munya no for na ko morning na say yes ye won crofobity abonti o me dey mo mo be boa but how we ngofo nyina ye di and afro obi na say we program no be frɛ wa was ade o mo ye ne de enya crowd as on so former justice o so be ka bonti
what me yi kai chachu chikata o say enye etu pe and the two aban and I'm rapong name will be so to Michelle week in this case lawyer for the judge for week no more two aban egu but person what say near to kunumu ye no o ma two aban egu
o tu aban egu
yeah right o mo tro constitution
for and America no so say constitution o mo twa for ye betra da bi o mo twa constitution for na woni dia na de metameka so they check 5 for no wo da bo nipa 5 bo mu din he said 7-0, 9-0, 5-0 no. Sangrofo no kwa o.
Jew squad no.
Sa squad no kwa no boss a match no.
You know if I'm saying unanimous
decision for Sangrofo we kwa. Etu okoko ba ko be fi 1 to 9 no. Omle da bi o rotate omo. At any time or to 10 11 baby friend be oba ono no. Ye bo match ko different side. And I'm until say
Tiamadu be friend.
O me friend. And on the boss that too no. What's but no one is obenya 5. And on head on me friend. Nana the American say until say Supreme Court bet to examine now so Ghana institution bet my papa nana. Mrs. Senka ye and yes oh ye the persistent Supreme Court. Yeah, Baba Transem be a panel, you say be panel 3 and now 5 and now 7 and now 9. You nya the ba person 5 way there. You try yes 5. Chief Justice also be transfer be more automatic for baako. Na yes nya 4. Na no nya other numbers na aka no. Wo ba na picking no you are not part of the panel. Na dey go.
Okay, balloting.
Ballot all the time.
Say ko bonya balloting.
All the time kai balloting. Ba ma me ne ba na ono no ba na o hye amanyoko bi atare na betra.
Sana eso mo ye na.
Sana kai so mo da bi o. That will be the best.
That will be the best.
All the time. On bet to take good decisions.
But this time no ma me no your pen no happen.
And no we kase yen kobọ kotoko na da bia ko na body a da bia benya team ni bia bo.
Yeah.
Say no okoko fam ye no be from match on kobo papepa nkofo na o ma bo different match. O mo ma biem. The next on ma da bia sa na o ye no. So I don't dey say samra no. What man say? Who we na the police service. And then you're pointing down parenting. Oh, yeah, Kufa Dojuma. What am I say? At the end of the day, why wouldn't you anything at Adibia no obey?
Okay, down parent, what time? Bepacho Ghana Police Service. Maybe breaky story be what have me go so chemo say mo declare tababa and Timon Femai. Now, empenyufo to me for some menka says alleged. Sir MPP ballot papers na electoral commission for printing and saying no police for intercept ye e was so jaman constituency mo tom print ya ma piles hagide any MPP Google Sachs no a omo che no a ye de aba headquarters IGP mo yakata so mu aso no yenim senya no kura come out bring me can fit last week mo fa kra time abontin Mon fa krata ma bonten. Apostle ni bia. Me person me bo bi edin. But I know say MP no was soja man. NDC MP no you have called. It's not enough. Say you just call the person and end it. It's not enough. Make sure say media and some expose sadie no.
How na dey call ye?
It's alleged say. Almost say is alleged. Say krom hadie. Adie soja alleged. Anyway, it's alleged say Apostle for no call patrol. Anom ko che nkrofobia. Omukura ballots papers ni bi. Ballot papers are easy a printing and say ano the call police headquarters. Ama is alleged say akosombo police high command kura papa ni buefu say I don't know what chair no man farm police directorate to the headquarters on street.
Yeah.
The call headquarters no is alleged say IGP you are aware of this. Ano makata de so. Amon person bia behunu because mon person behunu say you started tampering time MPP did that. And it's alleged say Pius Hagide any mamia oma tampering amon bebre
Shegum pasa.
ya tampering amon be enom ko enti om ko headquarters na so om ko electoral commission enko test say eye electoral commission printing bi na say om ko yen so ye no kre besin ne Ghana Police Service udi e fa say na make na ye ntro mon follow temra bontin kire say enye no kre because I'm out ana minimo
Because it is alleged say they work no me party for the NPP for na dwene ba ko ma fa ne say the day na e beto aba no on be baby on make on per recount the recount no e get da bi antiase ye fan go police station you do run the police station
e fan go police station
ya dey go police station no ye nam kwa mu ade ko no e how the changes aniam foforo beba eti ye dey bad ya car we di ba we so di ba ye ni nyina aba eti ni ade aba ka bo then that's what to eti recount juma e ho ballot papers
and no ye no what say line for you but a very important
thank you
and NDC for penny for ye pese etemunka on this one ya pese etemunka on this one me issue ni ba me ne panyifo bi pa de ho nkomo a because MP ni friend me say o maka ho asem me pese etemunka on this one mama ye hunu what is the state na say no kra and which sources no ne akwa de e be no kra shame them don't cover it mo omo ka say oh mo me anya no fie to bring tension they are lying bring it out ne ye hunu say o ma sase e temperate ye hunu boni omudie
na no tu ta go men ko ba sem so woni ma recruiter na make us asem we no ye di fi ba bi e ba bedro na na otu ago sankaye na Ghana Police Service edu se ba be yi IGP and a commissioner senior for no yan so mo ye 20 mo ye 50 and obia o we se mepe ni I think police service omo anya den ento abanyi omo pani a and omo to aba no mo yi omo pani o ye sure senka fa at the full senka e ba nko mo mie so ana onim senya kufa do na point no and onim senya kufa na ba point no eti o position a wo ye Ghana for adwuma the Ghana Police Service for no omo no beto aba even bo can fan fi say inspector for na beto aba na kopim de higher we na and ye to aba ye be yi ni papa pe be nyen good person be lead and ye go to aba ma dampari ye yi obi fu ka dampari wa asem aba me no ka say ayi ye wonu on fourth floor ko police headquarters ya they say waka soro obi anka so ko floor honum na wo ko ho wo say we kura more cameras on down party office wo ko hu bibia wo ye police ni na ko fourth floor honum so wo ko we honum ayi honum ye wonu ho and ye wa transfer wo ko nwuram to obi aso the last na me ko kama say me hwe na ko kama say bi a kire no me fro top no from say me ko inam say me ko ayi wo deputy IGP no say hey are you a police officer no say no and I'm say we no betima ko me ko ba me busa no say this is what I call so ade adam pare a police service na no odin I'm telling you the police for no mo bia no person ko ho ya papa no wo ye meet ya onfre no deputy wo say identity na say timi man deputy niam na operation on timi nya adwuma man nya ono ko na be ne niam because of Akufo na point on IGP it do no
adam pare on you so you no
yo no won ka police service ho I'm telling you, one ka police service was one of the police one man, no one was and no abese ko ni fie. On ka ho.
The operations no ye na.
Ya kan kwa. On your operations, am obi put ni court. So until say a man deputy IGP ni consul, any consul shimu, it will be ni court. And one down pare na a hye no am obi.
And the ultimate ka say no wa hye, no. Ade ni ho
it is alleged na be show.
It is alleged.
What must say? The same thing. What must at the end of the day, that what man say institution no e ko say ya. Oko amia the same thing. Now no appointment na Nana Akufo-Addo ye. Asoja fo ni nyina bonyu so. Akoma we akofo obi fi form and ya raise na ya na babedi omo so. What must say? Edum pempenso na institution ankasa enyi niam ntuma na na otu da ko be ha dwene the same thing and the Supreme Court ya no. Maami toko ni ofi High Court 2019 Supreme Court and Chief Justice and what cotton for Bebreu. You are a power more your man because you need your person obey, you need match your person, you need referee your person obey. What man say? It's a referee and one odi. Nanka ye nanka mrawo who are people court and for being fair bontia. Me say my classmate I do say what no way standard authority deputy director. Now no kufa the fan or number P court.
Wow.
Second people
into we and some other team course or channel so mamma was so jemre that's a ne. So bad the end of Dumbi Edomiania. If a sample room, now you to me, a dear chasing as some. Ah, a FunnTV GH.